Today, season 2, episode 2, I have the most wonderful, respected, smart, and has the biggest heart of a leader that I have met is Dr. Robert Howard, and he is the president and so much more of Dorn Transfer. And when I met Dr. Howard, I was so blown away with the love that he has for his organization, for his teams, for his people, and for everyone around him. And on top of that, he accomplished getting his doctorate exam, and he studied his passion for love for learning. And I am so thankful that he took the time, because he's a busy man. If you know him, he's traveling around, but he's going to spend the next little bit with me today. So Dr. Howard, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being an inspiration. Introduce yourself, tell everyone what you're passionate about. I love this.
Well, thank you for having me on. Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Howard. I'm a proud father of two and work as president and chief operating officer of Dorn Transfer Company here in Rock Island, Illinois. We're a less than truckload carrier with about 1,300 employees. Professionally, I'm passionate about trucking and leadership. And in fact, along with gamification, those were the topics of my doctoral research. Trucking companies, they play such a critical role in the American supply chain, and just being able to support the men and women that keep things moving, it's really rewarding. And to do that properly, you have to be passionate about learning and you have to be passionate about leadership. So
yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's interesting when the hurricane hit North Carolina last week. One of the things that you can always count on are trucking companies to step up and help. I just put a post out there that, does someone need help? And I had clients reaching out to me, helping another company get food to North Carolina. So thank you so much for all that you do and your passion for learning. And so I know you have completed your doctorate exam and you went through that process. But aside from that, can you think of like a time or something specific that like stood in your way of your passion of trucking or doing what you love to do?
I wouldn't say necessarily stood in my way, but I think there's certainly been some dark days in this industry and over the years. So, two different times I was at companies that were acquired, and that creates a lot of stress and anxiety for employees. They're going through a lot of change, and that's pretty difficult times. And I think also, during recessions, or even recently during the COVID-19 pandemic, those don't necessarily stop your passion for what you're working on, but it does force you to reprioritize your initiatives. And maybe in those instances, I had to put less focus on some of the items I enjoy the most, and really just reprioritize what I'm working on until we can get to a point where we can kind of get back to what I'm really most passionate about.
Yeah, I really like this idea of refocusing, especially when you're faced with something that's really difficult, like those things you mentioned, like an acquisition or COVID or whatever that is. A lot of times what happens in our mind is something called cognitive distortion. And cognitive distortion really prevents you from moving forward and prioritizing things. So it is critical as a leader or non-leader to be able to prioritize and reposition your thoughts to move forward. So that's really interesting that you even said that. I can appreciate that. What do you think every day like inspires you to continue to move forward in trucking? I mean, I know trucking is hard. I talk to carriers all day and it's not an easy job. So what is it that keeps you inspired?
I graduated college in 2000, and I started working in this industry 2 days later. And I just fell in love with it. It was the pace, it was the people, and it was really like how important the work that truck drivers do on a daily basis. And it was rewarding, just a rewarding industry to be part of. And I think it turns some people away, just the pace. And a lot of it happens at night on cold freight docks where it's really hot or chaotic. And those were, truthfully, some of the things I just love the most. I knew early on, back when I was just 22 years old. Like this was the industry I want to spend my career in, and it's just been wonderful.
Ah, I love that. You know what, Dr. Howard? I had that moment exactly like you did. And for me, I was in an orientation room and I was watching the drivers sit there for hours on end. And I talked to the drivers, and they really, as you know, or any of the workers are going to tell you exactly how they feel. But the fact is, they're hard workers and they want to do a good job, right? They inspire us every day to want to get up and do this and help them. So I love that. And when you think about that every day, so every day is grueling, like you said, and the pace is so fast and so intense, and you're traveling around and you're meeting with people. When you wake up in the morning, what keeps you happy? I want to know what keeps Dr. Howard happy every day to keep
Well,
doing this.
yeah. I mean, first, just taking care of my family, being a good father, those are like my first source of
Oh,
happiness. But, as for learning, I think, I consider myself a lifelong learner, and it's
mhm.
opened doors for me personally, professionally. It's allowed me to build skill sets to be more successful. And I think maybe more than anything, I try not to take for granted how precious time really is, and to be able
Uh-huh.
to learn and to grow. I kind of look at it as just a gift in itself. And the way I guess maybe I'm just wired is I try to be just relentless in my approach towards development. It's just something I'm used to.
Oh,
I think it kind of goes back. I've just never heard anybody reflect back on life and say, hey, I spent too much time doing things I was passionate about. I spent too much time studying. I read too many books. I just don't hear anybody say that. Or I spent too much time building relationships with my family. So I try to use that as motivation to just be intentional about development and about really focusing on whatever I'm passionate about.
wow. Relentless for professional development. I'm going to quote you. That's going to be my tip that you came up with. I love that word because learning is life, learning is growth, learning is continues to move us forward. And when you think about that, like having that perception of just, digging in and continuing to learn, was there a pivotal moment? Like, were you born this way, Gary? Like, were you born and then you were like, okay, I'm just going to like have this perspective? Or do you think it's something that you learned, or was there a pivotal moment or person that really put this inside of you or had you like think this way?
I think it goes back to when I first became a leader in trucking, and this was
Mm.
back in 2000. I worked for a company called Roadway Express, and they're out of
Mhm.
business now, but there was a great big union company,
Yeah,
and
they
I
were
loved I
Michigan
loved everything
City, I
about
think.
I loved everything about it, the pace, the excitement, but the way that it was designed and the culture wasn't great. As I reflect back on it, it was a them versus us kind of mentality.
Uh-huh.
And I left the organization after it got acquired, and I went to another company where it was all about togetherness. It was all about
Mm.
building the right culture. And I think what that did was help me get interested in learning how to become a better leader that supports people.
Oh.
And even, that's been 20 years ago, but that contrast really kind of helped me frame the way I think about just approaching our employees and about
Mm.
leading others. And I try to go into things with the mindset of like, our customers, they don't care if I made it to work today. What they
Yeah.
care about is the person that answered the phone to take their pickup,
Yes.
the driver that made their pickup off their dock, the dock worker that unloaded it and consolidated it, the line haul driver that takes it from point A to point B, and then the delivery driver. And I try to keep that in perspective to understand that my role and all of our leaders at Doran's role is really to support those employees. And I think even to this day, I draw back on those experiences at Roadway and kind of help me build like my mindset now and kind of how I approach things.
Togetherness. That's it, right? It's like
That's what it is.
it's building a connected culture. I mean, that's truly what you're talking about, and being there and showing up for each other and being the person that somebody wants to be around. And all of these things that you're talking about is really defines somebody with a mind of a champion. It really truly does, because when you have a mind of a champion, you're able to overcome and be resilient, to be able to show up and be together. So, Dr. Howard, what is, if I have you on my show because I believe you have a mind of a champion. So, what does that mean to you? How do you define having a mind of a champion?
I think it starts with just having an optimistic mindset, to being open minded, to try and your very best to see the best in people,
Mm.
to be active and not being a fault finder only, to look at a problem and just know it's going to get better in the morning, and having this attitude that we can do whatever we put our mind to.
Oh,
And I think, I think like it's looking at a challenge and saying, how can we do this, instead of looking at a challenge and saying, hey, we can't do this because whatever the reason
mm.
is. I think, just a champion mindset is rolling your sleeves up, whatever the task is. And, when you're around that, it's infectious to others.
Yes.
People want to do that. I've been around some incredible leaders. We have
Uh-huh.
incredible champions here at Door, and I thrive off working with them, and it really does make you want to work even harder for people.
Absolutely. Like showing up like that to me, think how many times you've been in a group and somebody is down and somebody's looking at something negative, it just brings everybody down. So you have a choice every day on how you come to the table and want to be connected with other people. And I like this idea that you say of just being optimistic and thinking about things in a positive light, even when it's dark, even when it's hard. There's some opportunity to learn, and there is some opportunity to grow, and there is opportunity to win. This season my whole podcast is about winning. And I like to think about this concept when you think of Michael Jordan and you think of like great athletes and you think about what is winning like to them and what does it mean to them. But when you really think about it, you don't have to be an athlete, you don't have to be a famous person to think about winning. Anybody can win. And so, Dr. Howard, what does winning look like to Dr. Howard? Dr. Robert Howard, what does winning look like to you?
I think it depends on the context. So as a father, winning is helping my
Oh,
children develop, helping them grow. In our business, it's servicing our customers. It's making sure our employees have rewarding careers. As a leader, it's developing others to reach their potential. And I think for me personally, it's really just working to be the best version of myself. I don't try to compare myself to anybody else. I mean, most things are a journey. And if I can wake up and be better today than I was yesterday, then I feel like I'm winning. And I think that can be tough for people, especially if you're not wanting to hear feedback about yourself. I'll give you this quick
mhm.
example is that when I was going through my doctoral research, I had the most incredible chairperson, Dr. Tiffany Hamblin from the University of the Cumberlands. And she would give me so much constructive feedback. And if you had the wrong mindset, you could take that and say, oh my gosh, I'm not as good as I should be. I took that as a gift. Like, I'm
Mm.
learning how to become a better writer, how to construct my thoughts. And not that I would be better or worse than anybody else, but I would be better than myself, better than I was yesterday. And I'm going to even be better tomorrow. And to me, that's winning all day.
Absolutely. And look where it got you. I mean, listening and taking that input from somebody else made you graduated with something that not many people can accomplish. And so, I think that's a really important takeaway for anybody, for all of us. And I think a lot of times people would see someone like you or see someone like me and say, well, you don't understand. I mean, you are in charge of a company, or you have everything, or you are gifted these qualities. But everybody has the opportunity to win, and it really takes that specific mindset to help you get there. And this is why I started my podcast, and I decided to continue on for a second season, just because I have so many awesome people like yourself to celebrate. But the reality is, people are struggling. I was talking to Dr. Howard before we went live, and I told him this morning for the Iowa Motor Trucking Association, I did a webinar and 63 people, and I asked the first question I asked were, how many of you feel like 9 or 10s today? And how did you answer, Dr. Howard? How do you think that went?
I thought it was maybe a 4.
Maybe a 4. Yeah. I mean, most people on that call were 3s or 4s. So think about that today at the workplace. Maybe I'm smiling, maybe Dr. Howard's smiling, but maybe we're really feeling like a 2. We have to show up. And so when you have that as an example and you think about people who just are feeling like a 2 or a 3, what advice, if they say, look, I don't have a passion for learning or growth or this mindset that you're talking about, what advice would you give them to help them move forward so they feel better?
I would tell people to just really reflect back on what makes them happy. There is so much about life to learn and enjoy. I'd ask them to question, like, what puts them in the zone? What puts them in the flow state between boredom and anxiety? What
Ooh,
makes them happy? And once you find that, start to spend more time there. And I know stress and the pace of things can get in the way, but life is short, and it's each day is a blessing, and finding ways to take advantage of that on the things that really bring passion to us. It's important to do.
yeah, it definitely is important. This next 8 weeks on my LinkedIn, I'm doing a theme a week for individuals to really engage in, to really help them think about how to make yourself happy and just make each other happy, and to build, like you said, this connected culture with each other that's so important for not only our minds but our hearts. So thank you for that, and thank you for being a leader that believes in it and bringing this to your organization, because it's critical that we support each other in those ways. So thank you for that. So last week I asked my guest. So this week this podcast season I'm doing something new where we get a question from a guest from last week and they ask, and then you can create a question for a future guest, which is going to be next week. So the question that my guest last week, Milana, asked, and her business is specifically looking at helping people avoid burnout. She says, "What does unhustling mean to you in the context of winning?" So how would you ask that? And she focuses on burnout. So we're talking about an industry. This is like the perfect question for you, because trucking is stressful. Well, work is stressful in general, but like your whole company is, like you said, the pace. There's just an inherent level of unhustle. You have to hustle and hustle. You have to hustle. So what does this mean to you?
I think unhustling for me means, take time to enjoy what's happening around you, even if it's just
Mm.
for a brief moment, even if it's just to have a quick conversation with somebody, to be polite, to be proud of a job you just did. Just it goes by so quick, and just be intentional about that, and really, really just try to enjoy what's going on around you.
Yes, absolutely. If you're getting out of a vehicle, take a deep breath and smell, and hopefully there's some beautiful smells around you, or listen to the birds. Just send somebody a text. If you're listening, send a text to someone and tell them why they matter. Just take the time. I love that. I love that. That was a good question. It was a great answer. I like that. So what question would you have for my next week's guest that we can ask them and see how they do?
One thing I struggle with personally is I am interested in so many things. I want to learn about A to Z about 100 different items, and there's only so many hours in a day. And I'd
Oh,
be interested to hear how others prioritize where they're going to focus their attention on development.
okay. I like that. Where do you prioritize the time that you do have in between work, your family, for learning? So we'll ask that next week and we'll see what our guest brings. Dr. Robert Howard, thank you so much. So I want you to leave us with your a final word of wisdom. Send us off on this Friday Junior of October 3rd of something good, and tell people where they can reach you, and reach out to you if they need help or they need something or they want to connect with you about Dorn Transfer.
Well, first, you can reach out to me directly. My email address is robert.howard@doran.com. And I think the last thought I would leave everybody is there's wonderful truck drivers throughout the United States doing essential work that was really brought to light during the COVID pandemic. And if you get a chance, just make sure you thank one of them if you run into them.
Thank you, drivers. Thank you, all the fleets. Thank you, everyone who joined us today and who will join us virtually. We appreciate you, and do something